Okay, when we left the story, I'd just been summarily sacked. I was sitting out in the car with Jackie Dutton. They'd said there was no appeal. I made it plain that I wasn't prepared to accept it, and I wanted to use, the strength of the law to try and get some recompense or something, even though it was pretty plain from even that position there that they didn't want me, they weren't going to give my job back. So we started along the road to employment tribunal proceedings, and I was in contact with the unions via email and phone, stuff like that, and we had to prepare these forms, ET1s and ET3s or something. I forget which one was which. And the union said it would be really useful if you could get some people to speak on your behalf as witnesses to what was going on, because I had pointed out, I wasn't the only one that was suffering. I was probably suffering more than most people from the IT problems, and I hadn't heard from anybody from the school staff except for Paul. I mean, Paul and I, we'd been friends for years, 17 years or something. Every Friday we used to go out for a drink, even when we were at school. And people used to call it Steve and Paul off of their staff meeting, Friday lunchtime. Anyway, we continued to do that, and I continued to see Paul. And, he said that the notice had gone up about me being sacked, but they didn't give any details as to why it happened. And I said, can you put the word around a bit for me? Anyway, one Friday when we met, he was with a couple of colleagues. 2 or 3 of them came down. I can remember Ross Underwood, who was a music guy. He'd suffered terribly from computer problems because he did music technology, and he was pulling his hair out with computer problems, because obviously they had to use computers all the time for that sort of stuff. And Trudy Cliff came down as well. She was my house mistress, house master. She was in charge of Watson House, and we'd been known each other for years. I think the other one was Sue Newton, who hadn't been there very long. She was quite a nice lady. She was modern languages teacher. I don't know how these wee people were selected. I suppose it's because Trudy and Ross I'd been drinking with quite a lot in the past, with house dues and things like that. Anyway, they turned up, and I was sort of told them what had happened, and suggested that people might like to talk on my behalf as people who knew me. And it was embarrassed silent, and some people looking down at their shoes and things, and Ross said, we've just had another baby and I can't lose my job, and Trudy said, we're just moving and I couldn't lose my job now, And I said, well, you're not going to lose your job. All you've got to do is come to a tribunal and tell the truth, answer questions and tell the truth. What can happen? It's quite funny really, because I'd already asked Paul, and he said there's no way. He said, I'm just too nervous, I can't do it. And he said, I can't lose my job. And I said, well, you can't be sacked for telling the truth and not having done anything. He said, well, they did with you. So he'd already made it plain he wasn't prepared to help me, which was disappointing to say the least, really. Anyway, that was that. Anyway, these guys, decided that they weren't going to do anything. Nobody else was going to do anything, and pretty well I was left on my own with this. When the their ET form came through, they just gave me a copy of it. They dragged up, this was the reasons for sacking me. They dragged up all these old stories about, in 1995 he was given a written warning for having his tie undone, and in 2001 he missed a junior school parents' evening, and in 2005 he got back late one day from his one day from his holiday, missed the beginning of term. I had things like that on it. They also said that I was using the computers and encouraging my pupils to use computers in a way that would cause them to fail, so that I could get Apple computers, which was interesting. I'm not sure what evidence I had for that. What using a computer is going to cause it to fail in that context. They also said that I'd become alienated from my colleagues, and a large number, or many staff, had no wish to work with me. They said they didn't want to work with me, which was interesting. Nobody named, of course, because it was total tosh. Anyway, the unions started getting cold feet on this, and they said basically, we think you should take the money and run. I said, A, it's a matter of principle. B, it's a tiny amount of money. C, I'm never going to get another job. I mean, the reference, they gave an example of the reference they give me, and it said, Stephen Lund has been at St Edmund's School since 1991, and his exam results are broadly in line with the national averages. And that's all it said. Didn't say anything about all the additional stuff I'd done. Nothing else at all. So anyway, in the end, the union said, well, that's our advice. If you don't want to take it, we're going to pull out. We're going to leave you on your own, which is what they did. And I have to say that was probably a bit of a low point, I would say, to say the least. So I contacted a few solicitors, spoke to them on the phone. I think I've contacted about 3, 4 maybe, and they all said, Employment Tribunal, you're not going to have enough money to cover our expenses. We're sorry, but we can't do anything. If you're prepared to do it and take a big loss, okay. Well, I mean, I was still paying a mortgage at this time. Chloe had just gone away to university. Maggie was doing 2 days a week, so it wasn't exactly an option. So that died a death. I went to the Citizen Advice Bureau, and I had a couple of interviews with a bloke there who knew a little bit about it, and he looked at the paperwork that the school had sent through, and he said there's nothing there. They can't possibly justify sacking you on what they got here. It doesn't make any sense. And he advised me to go to the Kent Law School, and the Kent Law School was University of Canterbury law degree types, and there'd be 2 or 3 students, and then they'd have a proper solicitor there, and the idea these students would interview me, and they'd do a case thing. Anyway, I turned up to them, had an interview with them, which was very useful. And they said the same thing. The professional solicitors there laughed. He said, "This is a joke, because it had been prepared by their lawyers." He said, "There's nothing there." He said, "There's nothing to stand up." They said, even if everybody on the staff said they didn't want to work with you, they can't sack you for that. It's up to them to make people get on, isn't it? Anyway, so that was that. So I was slightly encouraged by that, I suppose, but there was still the problem of not having anybody. It was my word against theirs, because this is what the unions had said. They said, you've got no witnesses. They'll just trot a load of people out and said, yes, he did this, yes, he did this, yes, he did this. And you've got, it's just you against all of them. Anyway, so I was a little bit nervous, to say the least, at the prospect of going into the court just on my own with no support at all from the point of view of witnesses. When out of the blue I got an email, I don't know if it was an email or a phone call, I'm pretty sure it was an email, from Linda Ashby, Dr. Linda Ashby, who was the head of science at the school, and she said, can we have a meet up and have a bit of a chat? Anyway, we met and had a cup of coffee and a chat. And she said, we haven't been told anything. And when I told her what had happened, she was outraged. She said, that's appalling. She said, I'd like to help you. This is strange, really, because we were colleagues. We got on well. We seemed to be on duty quite often together. So we spent a lot of time chatting. And she was very nice, quite a feisty woman. And she said, oh no, I'm not. you know, they can't do anything to me, sort of thing, blah blah blah, because she was a senior teacher as well as being head department. And she said, I'd like to help you, and she found some copies of minutes from staff meetings, and another thing which had been given at a staff meeting called an IT report. Now, I'd never seen this IT report, which is strange because obviously Kathy had got it, and I'm surprised she didn't decimate it. She didn't, what's the word? Give it out to us. Can't remember what the word is. And this had some extraordinary things on it. This IT report, it was going on, the staff meeting minutes were sort of saying things like, you know, everybody else in the country seems to have a computer system that works, why don't we? And they were listing things that were going wrong. And I mean, Kathy even brought up that we had an inspection. I was inspected twice, and both times my computers failed, you know, which was quite stressful, as you can imagine. So this was on that, and the IT report, it was saying basically the IT we've got and the support was rubbish. And this was prepared by Janet Mander. And it actually said the IT system and support in St Edmunds School is an obstacle to effective teaching rather than the enhancement it should be. Well, I thought, this is gold dust. You know, they can't possibly suggest at the school that everybody in the school, you know, was suffering from computers, but in my case only, it was because of the way I was using them. So, you know, that was pretty good. That was, you know, I was starting to feel a lot more confident about it. And so the other thing Linda said was she'd be prepared to come along and be a witness for me and be questioned. So that was, you know, talk about the cavalry coming over the hill. It was really good and really quite moving that she was prepared to do that. And she said, I said, why are you doing this? And she said, because her sister had been in a similar situation. She wasn't a teacher, but she'd been in a similar situation where her employers were ganging up on her and making up stuff, and nobody would support her. And her sister, you know, suffered quite a bit for it. She said, I'm not going to let it happen. It's just not fair. So anyway, that was that. So we were all ready to go to the employment tribunal.